Welcome to Papillion UnScripted. I am Michael Severe. It is the place to go to hear from people who truly help Papillion feel like home. Joining us now, not just helping you feel like home, but also helping with other things, the Deputy City Administrator, Phil Green, joining us here. We finally got you on Papio Vision.
Yes.
We got you.
Good to be with you today.
3 years?
Almost three. Yeah,
Almost 3 years. Yeah. So if I do my
three
math,
3 in March.
That brings you back to a really tough time in our country and, of course, the city's history. Right at the beginning of the pandemic, that's when you took over.
Yeah, March of 2020, and nothing seems to have been normal since. And, so we shut things down. We had some staffing issues and learning to work off site, and closing down. The Papillion Landing had just opened up, and then we had to kind of close all those kinds of things down, and then we rolled right into the City Hall remodel project.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's been kind of crazy.
Well, they say the best way to learn how to swim is to be thrown deep into the pool, right?
Exactly, it's been good.
So you should swim pretty well right now.
It's gone well.
So, City of Papillion, why'd you decide that would be the next job for you? What was the entrance in the city and this job?
Well, I worked for 15 years in the city of Blair,
right.
And I always knew that Papillion was just kind of one of the flagships here in the state, and so was very content in kind of my job and doing things up there. I looked around and applied for a couple other places, but nothing had kind of ever happened, and so I was content just to kind of continue to work hard and be involved. And all of a sudden, the phone rang one day. And it's like, wow, this would be a great challenge, a great community. And I've really been impressed being down here with just the professionalism of the staff and how dedicated everyone is. And obviously it's a fast growing community and the fastest growing county in the state. And so for a guy who likes to kind of be in the middle of all the mix, this is the place to be.
My son asked me last night, he said, what does a deputy city administrator do? And I said, pretty much everything. If you're going to give us 2 or 3 things that you do on a weekly basis, what does your job entail?
Yeah, well, obviously, the staff exists to kind of implement the policies that the city council establishes. And so that's the primary role of the whole staff. The senior admin staff then is there to kind of really work with the department heads, understand what their needs are, which really focus a lot on finances and personnel. You get them the resources that they need, and then just kind of help orchestrate and administrate. Up in Blair, much smaller community, and so I was very hands-on there. Here it's a lot more guidance and administration of the staff.
At the same time, if something goes wrong IT-wise and we can't get a hold of the IT people, you're an expert in that as well.
I'm kind of a jack of all trades. It's always kind of been my go-to motif, and so yeah, and we don't really have one person on Papillion's staff that is kind of IT oriented, and I kind of naturally lean in that direction, and I'm a guy it's always hard for me to say no, and so I'm always willing to help. And
Let's go back. Born and raised in Nebraska?
Yes, Eastern Nebraska, in fact. So born in Lincoln, kind of moved back and forth at times between Lincoln and Omaha. Went to sophomore year in high school here in Omaha, and then moved back down to Lincoln, graduated there, went to University of Nebraska. And one of the unique things about me is I spent 15 years in ministry before I got into local government. So lived in Columbus for 7 years, and then back to the Omaha metro area.
What was the attraction? Was that right out of college you went into the ministry?
I did, yeah.
What was the attraction of that, and what were some of the things you did while you were in there?
I came to know Christ as my Lord and Savior when I was in high school, so that was a very important thing for me to do. Was involved in ministry and administration. That's just kind of always been something that I've always enjoyed doing. Taught a lot of Bible study classes and things like that, and so looked into getting involved in the ministry that way. Ended up being on staff at a large church down in Lincoln. We did a church plant situation in Columbus, so that's what took me up there for 7 years. Brought me back to Omaha then, and so I was on staff at Omaha Bible Church for 4 years. And then had a transition, ended up going back to school and getting my master's in public administration. What
was the calling for that? I want to go back to, because at that point in your life, you've established who you are for many people. Why'd you decide to make that turn?
Well, I'm kind of a hands-on, do-it kind of a guy. And so instead of going off to seminary, I had all my training in the local church down in Lincoln. And there was kind of a natural progression of all the different spots that I ended up going to. When I was done here at the church in Omaha, there just wasn't that next logical thing. But I had 2 kids in high school and one girl that was going into elementary school, and it wasn't the time for me to go across country and go to seminary someplace else. So then it was like, okay, I've got to decide what else do I really enjoy doing. Cities have always fascinated me just because of all the variety of different things that go on in a city. Plus, I'd always been involved in administrative kind of activities. The University of Nebraska at Omaha has a great master's program in municipal government, and so I decided to go back to school, get my master's, and was fortunate to get an internship up in Blair, turned into a full-time job, spent 15 years there, and now I'm here.
Yeah. Talk about Blair. What was it like? Obviously, a little smaller community. That means you have even more to do usually.
Yes.
So what was that like?
It was it was a great learning opportunity. Rod Storm, who's been the longtime city administrator up there, was a great mentor. And being in a smaller community, you kind of have the opportunity to get involved in everything. So I oversaw the planning and building departments, so I learned a lot about those things.
Right.
You know, so much of each of these unique areas in city government, whether it's finance, whether it's the building department or planning or public works, they have their own lingo, they have their own language, they have their own requirements, and so it was a great opportunity to kind of learn all of those things. And really those were skills then that I think they were looking for when they were getting ready to hire the deputy here. Plus being in Blair, it's kind of on the other side of the metro area, so a lot of the key players, whether it be from MAPA or the Department of Roads or others around the state, I knew all those people already, so I had a lot of those relationships, and so it's been a very smooth transition for me.
It really tells you a lot about your personality that you did the ministry for as long as you did, changed over, and you could have just stayed in Blair. I mean, that's 15 years. You've laid down stakes, but to still decide to move. What is it about those challenges that attract you?
Yeah, well, I always like challenges, and I like to see things work. I think growing up as a kid, I was a tinkerer, you know, and I like to make things and then watch it do things. It's one of the reasons why I got into computer science when I did. So of all the weird things, I was a psychology major and a computer science minor in college.
Okay.
People go, how do those things fit together? But it was all about seeing things work, and I like to see organizations work as well. And so that's what really has always interested me in local government, because there are a lot of different things that go on. Every day is a little bit different around here, whether you're working with public works or it's a community development project or a technology kind of related issue. So all of it's fun and never ending. So.
How long were you here when they came to you and said, hey, we want you to head up this 100-year building remodel?
Yeah, well, when they actually were hiring for the position, they had told me that they were looking at doing a city hall remodel. I was fortunate when I was up in Blair. We had built a brand new library up there, 15,000 square foot library. I was intimately involved in that project as well. And again, being kind of a technology geek, so I understood the technology side of it. So it really worked well, having Sean Hofstedt, who was a former chief building official here for the city. He and I really kind of dovetailed together on this project, and it really has turned out well.
Biggest challenge? What was the biggest challenge, that it was still during COVID and bringing in things that you needed, like maybe just steel or flooring or whatever else? Yeah. Or was it actually coming up with how you wanted this to look in the end?
And that was probably one of the bigger challenges, I think, for us, because a lot of the guidance and direction and foresight for what wanted to be done was really pulled together in-house. And so some building projects, you kind of have a design that's put on you, if you will, and someone else is overseeing it. This was really kind of, what do we want to do? How do we want to create this space or that space? How do we want things to work? Then just being on the technology side that I came from, I know one thing that's always true about a building, especially when it comes to a public building, is that it's always changing. Just because one department's in this part of the building today doesn't mean 2 years from now it's not going to be a completely different department. And so I just really wanted to make sure that all the technology that we put in was as flexible as possible. So as you walk around the building, there's network drops on every single wall. You know, we ran a lot of cabling in this building just to give it the flexibility that it needs for long-term use.
I know the mayor's talked about this a lot, but you also wanted to allow for city growth. So you made room in each office if they needed to add somebody else over the years?
So we did kind of a +1 approach. So every office, which, you know, I always had to remind the departments that you can't add one more person in each square footage space and not get smaller. And so the offices were all getting smaller, but it really has been very efficient and can hopefully satisfy the needs of the city for the next 10 to 15 years.
I know it wasn't Geraldo and Capone's vault, but was there anything when you guys are digging through that you found that you're like, whoa, this is incredible?
Well, obviously, those who know this building know up on the 4th floor, the jail that was up there. And so just the way this building was constructed. Now, one of the things that really pleased us is, even though it's a 100-year-old building, it's a steel superstructure, which meant we had a lot of flexibility on being able to remove walls in some of the different office spaces. But the way they built this building back then was the steel superstructure, and then they're actually clay blocks that make up the base walls, and then they would put plaster over those. And so it was rather unique on how this thing was built.
Yeah, one of the things you guys did on the 2nd floor was, I guess that mural was up there. It opens up, it brings in light. I didn't even know there was a room behind that until a couple of weeks ago. I have not been here, I guess, long enough. Talk about the idea behind that.
Well, one of the main goals was to try to keep the building as historic as possible, especially in the main hallways. And so if people haven't been in here in the building, I really encourage everyone to come over and kind of take a look at the building and walk through. It is open to the public. We've got this great art gallery that's on the second floor.
Phil will give you a tour.
Yeah, exactly. Even when I came here and applied for the job, frankly, one of my thoughts walking through the building was, wow, this is a really neat, ornate old building, but it looked like a 1970s building on the inside, and it was dark and kind of dingy. And the whole goal was then to open it up, to provide a lot more lighting, a lot more natural lighting. And so Sean had taken the time to go back and look at the original drawings. There were several windows in multiple places that had been closed up over the years, both interior hallway ones as well as some exterior windows. Most of those we put back in, and so we really wanted to try to open things up. And that mural where you were talking about on this ornate second floor, or the stairwell between the first and second floor, was originally intended 100 years ago to allow as much natural light into that stairwell as possible. And so we took the mural down, we put windows back in there where they used to be, and yeah, it really does improve the look. Plus, one of the things we did was we added a sprinkler system into the building, which meant that we could remove several of the firewalls that normally would be required to be in here. And that just has really opened up that whole hallway area as well.
So in the end, are you happy with the way
Super
everything
thrilled.
came out?
Yeah, and again, I think one of the greatest compliments was one of our council members who served on the council for a long time, and had I think his grandfather worked in the building.
Sheriff.
Yeah, it was sheriff.
Steve Imberg,
yeah, Steve. And so one of the things Steve had mentioned was when he first walked through it, he said, "This reminds me of what it was like when I was a kid."
Nice.
And that's really the look that we were looking for, especially in those hallways. Then what's interesting is that the motif was you go from the old hallways as you walk into each of the department areas. You want to feel like you're kind of walking into the 21st century, and so it looks much more modern, all the modern technology. So it's really a blending of the old and the new.
Speaking of that, we all know that eventually City of Papillion, Sarpy County is going to be so much larger than it is now. I saw somebody say 75,000 people in Papillion at certain points. What's that like preparing for that? To know that that's coming and you guys have to be ready for it at all different levels.
Well, people have always said when it comes to large challenges, like how do you eat an elephant? One
piece
bite
at a time. Yep.
And so you just kind of plan for the future that same way. So you know the wave is coming. You want to ride it. You want to try to enjoy it as much as you can. A lot of that means resources that, again, are going to be needed by the city, which is primarily finances, and then good personnel, and then places to put all those people. And so you just start planning, okay, what's the next phase look like? The city here has been very thoughtful in moving from facility to facility to facility. We've kind of gone through most of those facilities now. Fantastic, places we've got for public works, and we've got a great, community center now and rec center. It's probably now time to start looking again at the police department and some of the older buildings, and then you just kind of keep rotating through all those and making the improvements that are necessary.
County's kind of a team too. You work with other city administrators to make sure you guys are all kind of on the same wavelength at least?
We do. I think the relationships between the other communities here in Sarpy County are excellent right now. Having been, again, up in Blair for 15 years, it was always interesting to watch what was going on in Sarpy County, and kind of the turf wars that were going on. Over the years, they all realized that they really have to work together, and so it's been great to work with the different partners and the partner communities, and we're always excited to see good things happen in Sarpy County, even if it isn't in our jurisdiction.
Hobbies? What do? You seem like you're a pretty busy fella.
I am pretty busy, still very involved in church, and so involved in church here, happen to be an elder for my church and do some teaching, enjoy doing some
I wouldn't call you elderly, man. You look
great. Enjoy singing, and so one of the things I decided to do, because I had a lot of spare time in my life, is I actually joined the Papillion Area Community Choir. So
did you really?
So we got a concert coming up here just a few weeks.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's been fun.
That's really cool. Last thing I always ask people, you're going around this area, you see a lot of parts of it, you know it more intimately than some. Is there something that needs to be highlighted more, whether it's an event or an area or anything that you think that you want to point out?
Not really, mainly because I've been so concentrated in the 2.5+ years that I've been here and working on things that I need to get out more.
Okay.
And so to me, that's this whole transition of what does normal look like for me is going to be partly just being out and about. Now, the B-cycle that are available, my wife and I have started riding those bikes.
Oh,
and it's
awesome.
really been nice to kind of get out in the community and see places firsthand and enjoy the trails. Beautiful amenities in this area.
That's a big part of it. A lot of people say, the parks and the
Really
trails.
is.
Yeah.
So,
Phil, we appreciate it.
thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Glad we finally got you on here.
It's good. Thank you, Michael.
Join us again next time when, again, we speak with someone who helps make Papillion feel like home.